The AD-4NA Skyraider is a French premium ground attack aircraft in War Thunder. Let's check it out. The Douglas A-1 Skyraider was a surprisingly long-lived ground attack aircraft developed at the tail end of World War II, and it was produced all the way into the late 1950s. Despite being a piston-engine design, it soldiered on into the jet age and saw combat in a whole bunch of conflicts, remaining in service until 1985. What we're looking at today is the AD-4NA, which was a developmental version of the basic A-1 design. The AD-4 was equipped with radar and other electronic equipment upgrades over the basic A-1, carried 4 cannons in the wings, and had strengthened weapon hardpoints. The AD-4NA had the radar removed as well as some night bombing equipment, and was originally intended for daylight service in the Korean War. A squadron of these modified planes were eventually sold to France in 1956 and entered combat service almost immediately after the French swapped out the radios and finished their localization maintenance. France used its AD-4s in various colonial conflicts all the way up into the early 1970s when they were finally withdrawn from service. In War Thunder, this AD-4NA is a French Rank 4 premium aircraft at battle rating 6.0. The weapon loadouts that the AD-4NA gets are focused around some core weapons and a huge load of unguided rockets. The core weapons will end up being bombs, Tiny Tim rockets, or a torpedo, with the wings loaded up with a few different varieties of air-to-ground rockets. The rockets it gets are quite potent, even if they're not especially accurate. It's a safe bet that anything you can actually hit is going to pop, so it's worth taking some time to practice aiming. Since this is a prop fighter, there isn't any ballistics computer or anything. The flight performance of the AD-4NA feels a bit sluggish, but as long as you remember that this isn't a fighter, you'll be fine. The plane is quite large, roughly the size of a World War II light bomber, which makes it a big target in gunfights. Its maneuverability is only average, and it has substandard energy retention in dogfights, but the good news is it can take a lot of punishment before going down. The plane also is a pretty stable gun platform, and really it's easy to fly. There's almost no learning curve at all, and it only takes one mission to explore the plane's flight envelope and performance limits. Taking this plane out at missions kind of depends on your game mode and playstyle. Being a 6.0 prop, the AD-4NA straddles the edge between where most players are focusing on arcade and where they switch to realistic battles going into the lower tier jets. This plane can operate comfortably in either space, but it performs differently enough to have somewhat different roles. The in-flight rearming in arcade battles lets you fly the AD-4NA very aggressively, attacking a combination of bases, ground targets, and enemy aircraft, with bombers being especially vulnerable targets. In realistic battles, it's more common to focus on ground targets while only occasionally attacking targets of opportunity in the air. Because this plane isn't especially fast, you may run into trouble avoiding interception on some maps if there are faster attackers who can beat you to the closer targets. The heavy cannons absolutely can be used in air combat, just try to remember that this isn't a fighter, and if you get tangled up into a turn fight, it might not end well, and competent opponents will probably be able to outmaneuver this plane. If you find yourself on a map with ships, don't hesitate to take the torpedo loadout. The torpedo that the AD-4NA gets is very heavy and easy to use. It's always fun to sink some ships with this one. The extensive load of rockets gives the opportunity to take out a significant number of ground targets as well, allowing kind of a shoot-and-scoot style of mission, just loitering around the battle, mopping up ground targets of opportunity. The load of bombs is heavy enough to be worthwhile, but if you want to use the AD-4NA for attacking strategic bases, you'll usually have to score a solid hit with all 3 bombs, and dump your rockets into the base if you want to finish it off. Now, the AD-4 also gets a lot of utility for close air support. Its high quantity of punchy rockets, plus the bombs are Tiny Tims, can let you engage targets in ground RB without much trouble, and potentially rake up some considerable kill counts. However, as always, competent SPAA will be a serious roadblock, so don't get tunnel visioned and keep your situational awareness up. It's worth noting that at this battle rating, the AD-4NA can currently be tiered into combat against entry-level jet fighters in every game mode. The AD-4 is pretty weak against jets, and even the entry-level ones are going to give it a serious problem since it's a large target and it can't dodge high-speed hit-and-run attacks very easily. Now, something to keep in mind. This is a premium vehicle, so it gets solid bonuses to RP and a good bonus for Silver Lions too, and it starts with all of its weapons unlocked. If you prefer prop gameplay and you're looking for a French ground attack aircraft to grind out the rest of the tree with, you may find the AD-4NA to be a pretty good choice. Visually, the plane is pretty average. The only custom paint job you can get is a Gabonese Air Force skin, which is pretty cool since we don't get many African paint jobs in War Thunder, but otherwise the visuals are unexciting. The AD-4 has an odd shape, where the front half looks like a fighter and the rear half looks like a bomber, but that's just my opinion. The huge rack of weapons certainly gives it an aggressive appearance though, so that's not nothing. Landing the AD-4 is easy, but practice it once or twice anyway. This is a tail dragger and has a very flat landing profile, combined with relatively low speeds for gear and flaps. I ripped my landing flaps on the first landing attempt, so it's worth practicing the test flight. The cockpit on the AD-4 is pretty good. Strong visibility, good placement of instruments, and the gun sight is very easy to use. This is an easy plane to fly with the VR headset, and I was pleasantly surprised by the stable ride. To close out on the French AD-4NA, this plane has some good weapon loadouts and can take a torpedo. The huge quantity of rockets gives strong offensive punch, and it takes a fair amount of punishment in air combat before going down. Also, the plane gets premium bonuses. However, it's quite slow, it isn't the best in a dogfight, plus it's quite vulnerable to jets. The final verdict on the AD-4NA is that its performance in-game is very average, with no show-stopping problems. This can be a solid grinder for high-tier prop players looking to work on the French air tree. As always, thanks for watching.